Hello, and welcome to The People's AI, presented by Gensyn. I'm your host, Jeff Wilser, and today we are getting into the first principles of why decentralized compute matters with Greg Osuri, the founder of the Akash network. I'm proud to partner with Gensyn to bring you this episode and season 2 of The People's AI. Gensyn is a protocol for machine learning computation. Gensyn is building the network for machine intelligence that includes execution, communication, verification, and coordination software across every viable computer or device on the planet. And as you'll hear from Greg in this episode, Gensyn is playing a crucial role in the decentralized AI ecosystem. So why does all of that matter? Greg Osuri is kind of the perfect person to articulate all of this. He's building decentralized compute and has been since before it was cool, and he's also a leading voice in the space as he spoke before Congress on why it's necessary. For Greg, the math is very simple. AI is incredibly energy intensive. This is just a fact, and at the rate it's being built, energy will be a massive bottleneck, a choke point. So we need more creative solutions. Putting aside all of the many valid principled reasons why decentralized AI makes sense, fairness, transparency, leveling the playing field, making AI more inclusive. As Greg sees it, it's also imperative for the simple reason that we will need more energy. We need more access to energy. Greg gives a masterclass here at what's at stake of why decentralized compute is needed and what we can expect in the future. We get into how someday you can buy solar panels for your home, and when it's not being used to power your home, it could be used for AI on the side. We also cover how this whole space, this intersection of Web3 and AI, of decentralized AI, that is starting to get more and more mainstream recognition from the traditional AI scientists. What was once kind of fringe idea is now being more welcomed into the conferences and hallways and discussions of, quote, traditional AI development. It's pretty cool stuff. But for now, please enjoy my conversation with Greg Osuri, founder and CEO of the Akash network. Greg, welcome to The People's AI.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm excited to be here.
So let us jump right into the problem that you guys are solving, and more broadly, decentralized compute is solving. How would you characterize the problem or main pain point with the current traditional way that AI compute is being solved?
Yeah, so let's start with AI. If you look at AI, it is a substrate of civilization. There are very few substrates that we have. Historically, we had electricity as a substrate. We had water as a substrate to a certain degree, right? So this is very similar to what energy or water was, because it touches pretty much every industry that we interact with, right? So the foundational technology is not a feature. There's no technology or no area in humanity that AI will not touch. I mean, solving from healthcare to defending the homeland, doesn't really matter. AI is everywhere. When we have such a foundational technology, you got to ask yourself, what is this technology built upon in terms of layers?
Yeah.
And if you were to say, if I were to come to you and be like, hey, electricity is so important, but it's only controlled by 3 people, right? How would that make you feel? It doesn't matter if the people are good or bad, because people don't last forever. There's people and new people and new people. We all know historically, benevolence is never permanent, right? So it really depends on the people that control a certain foundation or layer that will result in how successful the layer is. So that's just at a high level, right? So today, the compute, particularly high density, high demand compute, is controlled by hyperscalers or people that have means to get massive amounts of energy. And that's not everyone, right?
And to be concrete, that means like a few big companies, right? Like NVIDIA and a few other big
Not
gargantuan.
even NVIDIA. I mean, NVIDIA just makes the chips. It doesn't control who gets. I mean, it's U.S. government that controls. If you were to ask me who gets the chips, but ultimately, people with chips are usually people that have access to enormous amounts of energy.
Yeah.
Because even like in 2023, if you ask me, people that have access to chips are all hyperscalers, because hyperscale companies, in the sense, these are large data center companies, be it Amazon, Google, or Microsoft, of the world. They historically controlled or had enormous influence in energy costs, right? Because a hyperscale facility like Google facility in Des Moines, Iowa, is about half a terawatt capacity. It's 500 gigawatts. So apologies, half a gigawatt capacity is 500 gigawatts, right? So that's a fairly large footprint, right? They've built out pretty much the highest growing sector in terms of energy consumption in the last 20 years has been data centers, right? In fact, the data center energy usage grew from 4.4% in 2023 to, and it is projected to grow to 12% in 2028, in 5 years. This is according to the Department of Energy.
Yep.
Who's known to make very conservative estimates, because it's a government agency and commissioned by the Congress and conducted by Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory, which is very prominent, right? And they've taken a very conservative estimate and say, hey, at the minimum, I think we're going to do 12%. Reality, I think people project anywhere from 30 to 35%, and it's actually resonating, right? If you look at what Elon Musk and Sam Altman's, if you look at the Twitter for the last week, Sam literally said they have approval for 4.5 gigawatts of capacity in Abilene, Texas. Now, to give you context, a nuclear reactor, a nuclear power plant generates about a gigawatt capacity.
So we need 5 of those.
They want to do 4.5, almost 5 nuclear reactors.
Yeah. And of course, the cost to build a nuclear reactor is...
Oh, that's cheap compared to how much money they can deploy. It's not
Fair.
the cost to build a nuclear reactor, it's the time. The last nuclear reactor took about 14 years in the US.
We're talking decades, not years, to build.
Decades, right? So we have about 96 reactors in America. They're fully utilized 93% of the time. The last remaining reactor was the 3 Mile Long Island in Pennsylvania that was scooped up by Microsoft on a 20-year lease. So there are no free reactors in America, and this is the most...
Right.
Nuclear power generation is our most efficient generation. It's the cleanest as well. So it doesn't matter if you want to build, you just can't build. Unless... I hear rumors, I don't know how true these are. I mean, I just saw something that they are repurposing jet engines as generators, but turning them reverse. There's all kinds of stuff people are doing. Elon, I don't know how far this rumor is true. Elon is actually purchasing reactors from foreign countries, disassembling them, bringing to U.S.
If there's one person who would do it, that sounds like an Elon side quest project.
Yeah. Elon said they want to bring about 50 million GPUs by next 5 years. Right. H100 equivalents, that's 50 million times. H100 takes about a kilowatt, in energy. You can do the math, right?
Yeah.
So the predictions from Department of Energy, I think, are very, very conservative if you talk to these folks.
Your larger point, if I'm getting this right, is that the energy requirements to meet this growing demand of AI are literally off the charts, even by the most conservative estimates, off the charts, and we will be hard pressed to find the supply to meet that demand. So when you look back at first principles, zooming the lens out, we're in a real crunch of supply for AI. And that's kind of like that's
not the worst part.
Go on, please.
The worst part is, where are we getting the supply from? We can't do renewables. We can't do, because renewables don't work at scale. We can't, even if you do renewables, you can't transmit them, because the energy, the transmission infrastructure in America is about 100 years old, and we have very strong property rights in the West in general, so we can't just put a line where you want. So it's very, very hard to upgrade. I mean, there are physical constraints as to how big a cable is. That's what it comes down to, right? It's copper cable. So it doesn't really matter if you build stuff, you can't transmit them. So what people are doing is the only way to get energy, or the fastest way to get energy today is to burn fossil. So the 4.5 gigawatt facility in Texas, if you burn fossil, because there's no other way, will generate about 2.5 million to 2.7 million tons of carbon every year. That's more than 2/3 of all the CO2 emissions done by Vermont in 2023. It's almost as much as a US state emitting. We're talking about one company. Now, look at all the aspirations. Mark Zuckerberg wants to outcompete OpenAI, bigger data centers. Elon Musk wants to outcompete OpenAI.
So we have Vermont, Connecticut, New Hampshire. Every company is adding one more state of emissions.
This is 2025.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So what that means is, like, I'm not a climate activist, but I'm also not like a denier in the sense that, the fundamental science says the more pollutants you put in the environment is going to be bad for you. So think about, if you had to give a perspective, that's the same amount of CO2 or carbon emitted by 2 million cars. So this is a small town of about 100,000 people in Albany, Texas. Imagine 2 million cars exhaust every day.
And to your point, Greg, this is, I'm guessing, the lowest it will ever be in the future, right? AI is not going to slow down.
Not getting better.
If 2025 is, or 2026, that is the floor for the supply required. That is only going to grow. And I would guess it will not grow linearly. I would guess it might grow exponentially. Yes. So
that's the scary part.
So can you share for listeners a bit about what you, the perspective you shared in front of Congress a couple months back?
So let's look at why that's happening. Right? So why that's happening is because traditional machine learning, the algorithms are very chatty, in the sense the amount of energy or the amount of information they exchange between training runs is quite a lot. To a point, as a model gets larger and larger, it gets slower and slower to train. So the only way to fix the only way known or people that opt is to reduce or improve the speed of the bandwidth. So that's why you want a lot of chips in a single location training, and a lot more. That you're going to hit a wall at some point. There's only so much chips you're going to put, and that wall is currently energy. And people are just breaking through the walls and just thinking through first principles that, hey, we'll repurpose jet engines, or we'll bring we'll dismantle all the Soviet nuclear reactors and bring them to America. So a lot of the stuff that's happening right now to overcome the energy problem, but not too many people are focusing on, like, can we actually change the math? The math, how we train algorithms. Now, people took a lot of stabs at it over years, right? And there have been miserable failures, but the last 1 year we saw incredible progress in three main areas. I don't want to get too technical, but at a high level, the first main area we saw as relief is low communication algorithms, in the sense like we can do low communication optimizers, we call them. So can we actually reduce the amount of energy bandwidth that's needed between nodes? So a company called Google DeepMind wrote a paper, owned by Google now, that one of the most advanced AI labs, in 23, called Dial-A-Co. Very promising. I think Prime Intellect took that and did a 10 billion parameter model very successfully, fully decentralized, distributed over the internet. Another company called News Research. They've been making rounds in the crypto space. They were able to raise. So I think these are very well-funded companies. I think News did about $50 million from Founders Fund. They were able to. They have an algorithm called Distro that literally stands for distributed training over the internet. They're able to reduce communication or improve bandwidth requirements by 875x. So from, I think like 80 gigabytes to like 70 megabytes. Give you a perspective. So very promising. Second area of research that seems extremely promising is fault tolerance. In the sense, like traditionally, what happens is machine learning is very finicky. So if say for example, you're running lots of thousands of nodes, and you do this in layers, in one layer, if one node fails, the entire layer fails. You got to restart, and that's not. It's very, very expensive to restart.
It almost reminds me of like old school, like back to how like lighting works, right? Like I'm thinking of like, junior high science, a string of light bulbs in sequential pattern. One light bulb goes out, the whole system goes down. When they realize, parallel, we can actually, yes.
Exactly. You're telling the word sequential, parallel. So all these are very good asynchronous, synchronous, or we call them synchronous in the sense like output of one has to be the input for another. That's called synchronous. So like you have like all these synchronous patterns and fault tolerance, lack of there is for synchronous training has been problematic. Now there's enormous work that happened to do asynchronous training using something called swarm parallelism, right? Companies, Pluralis is a company, Gensyn is another company.
Gensyn's been working on that, And so just to like why this matters in a decentralized way to kind of, if I'm getting this right, synthesize is that if we were trying to use my computer when it's being dormant and your computer and someone else's computer in like Malta, if they were all trying to train at the same time, that's like tougher to coordinate, right? There's a lot of like technical challenges to get them to synchronously train. But if I'm able to like on my computer do a discrete batch of work, Greg, you're doing the same thing, and someone in Malta is doing the same thing at different times, then we're able to kind of like report back the finished products of their batches of work to some larger AI training. Then that suddenly solves a lot of these technical challenges and helps remove some of the advantages you get from co-location of like just a ton of NVIDIA chips all in the same warehouse. Am I getting that right?
So asynchronous. So instead of relying on every chip to come back, you can asynchronously train them. And we have the problem of strangler nodes, right? Strangler nodes in AI means like so in AI, when you say you want H100s, you want H100s throughout because you're like basically having the same speed for all chips, and all of them like compute and come together. Then you start, right? The problem is if you have one node slower than the other node, the faster node still had to wait for the slow node. It doesn't matter. Your slowest node is going to be the determined.
Anyone who's gone hiking can relate to this, right? If there's 5 friends going hiking, you only go as fast as the slowest friends.
Yeah, exactly. So with asynchronous training, you remove the strangler node problem where it doesn't matter. Right. You can do your work when you have time and you complete your work. I will still take your outputs. The faster nodes will complete work much faster. Slower nodes will complete work slower. The training is going to happen when it's going to happen.
Right.
And there's like optimizers that'll reshard automatically and do all kinds of distribution automatically, so it doesn't have to wait for the strangler nodes. And third is trustability, right? Verification. So now Gensyn is, I think, is the leading platform here. They figured out how to do zero knowledge proofs for gradient synchronization. That means if I send you a result, I want to know I'm a node. You want to know that I'm computing the right result and not giving you some jump, because if there's an incentive, I can give you a junk, right? So and that opens up permissionless. That opens up pretty much any node to partake without having to establish trust. Now, where that goes is, I can have a PS2, and Gensyn doesn't care about what type of GPU, what kind of compute layer. All it cares is about output. As long as the output is valid, who cares where it came from? That's the true spirit of decentralization, right? So all these, there hasn't been a single platform that will bring all this together. Work there, but what I'm indicating is Gensyn alone, I'm a big fan, was able to do 12. I think I saw a number last night. It was 12,000 models of training concurrently, and the biggest model is 72 billion parameter model. For comparison, GPT-3 was 50 billion parameter model. Right? So we're very, very close to GPT-3, which was considered the state-of-the-art model a few years ago. That's what ChatGPT launched on. So if you were to ask me where distributed training is, it's about pre-ChatGPT-3. And by end of the year, it will be ChatGPT-3 level.
Yeah.
We still have
and growing very, very quickly, right? And
Very
accelerating.
quickly.
So it's easy
Very
to
quickly.
continue that trend line and imagine it catching up. And
It's catching up, and
Yep.
particularly a lot of these networks are either in testnet or either in like they're devnets. They're not mainnet yet,
Yep.
but they're seeing all kinds of like progress and momentum with traditional AI engineers. I mean, the reason I know this is last week I was in Vancouver speaking at the ICML conference. ICML is the most prestigious AI conference in the world. It's very academic. Completely opposite to crypto. When you go to the rooms, are massive rooms.
Crypto bros
Lectures
were
are-
not feeling the halls of that conference.
Oh no, the lectures are 1 hour long. These are serious lectures. You sit down there, you're like no messing around. And I give a lecture for an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, room was packed, about 300 people, 200 to 300 people. There were lines for questions, and so very, very like in depth. Like people come there to learn, right? It reminded me of what crypto used to be back in the day in 2013, like when it was cool. But you see there, last year, there was a very minimal decentralized training presence.
Right.
This year, 5 papers. I mean, to present at ICML is a very prestigious thing. It goes in your resume, right? So your paper needs to be peer reviewed and need to be accepted by ICML committee, and then you get it present there. I mean, I was invited to speak because of the energy stuff, but I didn't present a paper. But you can see Gensyn's paper got accepted, Plural's paper got accepted. All these crypto companies that people think are, they're just doing crypto stuff. Not really. And these are AI companies.
I've been wondering when I, like 2 years ago or over that now, when I began covering the space about kind of the decentralized AI and Web3 AI, I was wondering if this is so promising, why are we not seeing more folks in quote mainstream AI accepting or adopting some of the principles? And it sounds like now that actually that's shifted. They are like these ideas are gradually being incorporated into the world of traditional AI. That's what I'm gathering. Does that seem like the case from your end?
Absolutely. So why last year there was dismissal of distributed training? No one even thought this was possible. This year there are 5 papers that are all presenting at ICML. That's a big shift because that is acceptance by traditional AI. And we're talking about researchers. We're not. Most of them are like 90% are PhDs or postdocs.
And these are not even like VCs. These are like folks who care about actual, like the academic, rigorous problems and solutions. And there's a growing awareness, maybe there is merit to these other like less obvious solutions that are kind of not, I'm oversimplifying here, but are not in the framework of like add more compute and add more data, plug and chug and get better AI. These are kind of alternative approaches.
Yeah, this is completely redesigning the math behind it.
Exactly.
I mean, I wouldn't claim to understand the math deeply. I mean, I understand it at a peripheral level, at how it happens from a systemic level.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's fundamental shift in math, how you compute gradients. Now, the big challenge is like, the way AI training works at a high level is like you have your forward pass, then you get your results, then you get your loss, I guess, like you compare the actual to the expected, then you get your loss rate. The goal is to reduce the loss rate, and then you have back proposition, which calculates your gradient. So you have like this, it's complex, using a chain rule, you calculate your gradients, and you need to feed that into your next pass, right? So my question is like, how do you, if you're doing asynchronous, like you don't get the gradients back, how do you feed the next? There's a lot of like really complex logic. It's something that like it's not, I mean, traditional machine learning is not that hard to understand, but this is decentralized distributed training is a little bit very, very technical, very not the easiest thing to read, if you ask me.
Yeah. To your point, these advancements in decentralized training, like swarms and the work that Gensyn's doing, that is leading to make this model more able to scale, more able to meet the demands, to scale supply.
Yeah.
With that in mind, talk a little more about kind of what your message was to Congress. And then
Yeah. So my message was like, look, if we can figure out how to decentralize, or so instead of bringing the power to the AI, let the AI go to the power source. So if you have wind in Texas during the evening, let's go, train an AI model there, because now you have asynchronous. You can pretty much go anywhere you want. Doesn't matter what.
similar to Bitcoin mining in a way, right?
Exactly.
Saying cool, Bitcoin, very clever Bitcoin miners. We're like, we can use when there's less demand in the grid. That's a prime time for us to go and dial up our mining more or less.
Right.
Same concepts.
Correct. Like during the day, California will actually pay you to use energy, because we capture so much energy that we don't use it all. So there's not like we don't have energy. We do have the greatest fusion reactor sitting in our sky that we don't capture, right? Even if you capture, we can't like literally use that energy, because your homes only use maybe like on average 10 kilowatts, right? If you have like say 100 kilowatts, what are you going to do with it, right? So you can't sell it back, because no one's going to buy your energy during the day. Well, if you need to do it in the night, you got to store it. And
batteries are still, the economics of batteries are still a little shaky right now.
Like, for example, economics. But if you put a chip,
Yeah.
like I put a kilowatt chip, which 4090 is a kilowatt. If you can put 25090, is like 1.8 kilowatts. If I can put like a chip at home, that'll consume all the excess energy. So,
Greg, is there a model out there where we, so the world, the industry is somehow bundling AI processing or training chips or tech with solar panels? Like I'm literally buying a solar panel. What's it again?
It's called Akash network, right? So that's one of
Yeah.
So one of our core thesis is we have a new program called Star Cluster program. We talked about it briefly. This is my testimony, congressional testimony. This is my proposal I gave. Like, look, like instead of trying to overbuild, let's figure out how to do this decentralization. It's a much harder problem to solve, and it's being solved. It's not like we're starting from scratch.
Yeah.
By end of the year, we'll have a very high quality model that it competes with centralized models, right? So it's not far out. Now we're, I'm putting my money where my mouth is, and said, well, look, we are actually going to do without any help from the state, from the government. We don't need to, because the economics, number one, play really well. Like, okay, forget all the energy and all the stuff. Like, let's look at numbers, okay?
Sure.
Gen 3 reactors, which is, nuclear reactors, right? We currently have Gen 2. Gen 3 are the latest and the greatest. The economics, even if you were to go buy a new reactor and put it, amortization is not going to happen anytime soon.
Right.
The economics, the cost per kilowatt hour is 15 cents, I believe, for a Gen 2. It's actually much higher than, for Gen 3, it's much higher than Gen 2, because there's amortization cost, there's regulation costs. So nuclear reactor, if you get them, is going to be expensive. Then we go, okay, what is the cheapest form of energy? Wind. Wind is the cheapest form of energy. But problem with wind is location specific, and I guess it doesn't really work. In wind, you need batteries and a whole lot of things. It doesn't really work at utility scale. So renewables tend to have the cheapest cost per kilowatt, but they don't really work at utility scale.
Right.
The only way to do that is burning fossil. LNG happens to be the cleanest of all the dirtiest sources. Yeah. LNG will give you 10 cents.
Sorry, and for listeners, can you describe the acronym, please? Say again.
Natural gas.
Right. Thank you.
Natural gas, liquid fossil fuel. Natural gas tend to be the cleanest of the dirtiest fuels. It still emits a whole lot of carbons. It is literally burning methane, right?
Yeah.
But from unit economics, it costs 10 cents a kilowatt hour for gas. Okay, so let's look at diesel. Okay, can we burn diesel? 32 cents a kilowatt hour. It's very, very expensive. So diesel generators are considered to be backups. They're not cheap.
Right.
Well, the cheapest is solar and a home and wind. Well, every house has a rooftop. We just don't use the rooftops. Like in Texas, a typical ranch house has 4,000 square foot of rooftop. And that generates about 80 kilowatt energy, for 6 hours a day, right? That's a lot of energy. So if you put a rooftop solar and connect the solar to a box right here, I have one. Can't move my camera here, but I have one, a Star Cluster box here. It's got a 4090 GPU, very powerful, good enough to participate in, it's actually running on Gensyn right now. testnet, and Akash, right? So, and we want to go and deploy first these boxes in every place possible. You can get cheap energy. As long as you have cheap energy and cheap bandwidth, you're good to go.
Well,
In a house, it's actually very, very profitable to actually have one of these boxes in your home. Star Cluster program is a program to democratize beyond a data center. So we have multiple phases. The first phase we're doing is edge data centers, in the sense these data centers are not your traditional colos, where you have large facilities, usually about 10 megawatts of capacity, but these are like sub 10 or sub even 1 megawatt capacity. These are so a lot of like telco companies. Some of them are in trouble after streaming came and Apple TV came and destroyed some of these businesses. But turns out they have a lot of edge sites. US alone, we have about 5,000 edge sites. Edge sites mean these are small data centers with water and energy.
Okay.
And bandwidth, because these are telcos and they have cheap bandwidth and they own them.
Sorry, guys. So they were originally. What was the original intent of these facilities?
The telecom edge data centers. So for example, telecom, like Comcast of the world, they are, it's basically a giant network. It's a gigantic wide area network. It's all cables. You have like your fiber, which is SFP cable, connected to your Ethernet cable. These are literally like different switches or routers at different points. Every telco has massive urban presence in terms of data centers. They're in the middle of cities, literally, right? And they usually have very, very good PPAs or power purchase agreements, because these are multi-year PPAs.
Yep.
And a lot of them have made incredible investments in green energy due to the mandates that we had in the last few years. So a lot of these telcos are very underrated data centers, and nobody like to use them because they have a cap in terms of how much energy they can produce, because they're urban areas, right? They're not, rural areas where you have large swaths of land and less and easier permitting, processes. So leveraging our edge network alone in the West can give you an incredible heads up in terms of just capturing energy. So, you don't need to go inside a house. Of course, the goal is to go inside a house. That's the vision of Star Cluster.
Yeah.
We're working with partners now. I don't want to disclose who they are to really finalize the terms, but some of our partners are in about 22 million homes in America.
Is the idea that Greg, that I'm to be very concrete, I'm literally right now buying a solar system for my home with a pretty large roof in Colorado, lots of sunshine in Colorado, and I like the idea of solar, right? And there's obviously the break-even math and economics of solar. It was the idea that I would be able to, when I get my system, and maybe it's just, let me know it's phase 2 or phase 3, is I would be able then to also get some additional, what is it? Is it some kind of device or some kind of additional?
You'll have a device that'll pay for the solar and the battery, and everything.
And it's training. So while is providing energy for myself to power my home, when I'm not using, if I'm only using 60% of the sun's energy any hour for like my basic kind of, for my power, my TV, my AC, and so on, that excess 40% is funneled into this device that's providing compute for AI. Am I getting that vision right?
Correct. So, like, if you have enough energy, so the challenge with the home, and depending on.
Also, can I get this tomorrow? Because I want to do this.
We have a prototype here at home, in my house. But the two ways to look at a home is a little challenging in terms of limits, in terms of fire code, in terms of consumer safety limits and power safety limits. So if you ask me, my Texas home I'm building has about 100 kilowatts. I'm not exactly going after safety limits. But a typical house in US runs at around 15 amps at 120 kilowatt and 120 volts, which gives you about maximum 1800 watts to work with without tripping the power company. Even though you have solar, you still are connected to the grid, and that's how it works. And it's kind of stupid, but it is what it is. So there's always the interconnect limits that you have to conform to as a home, or else you'll be categorized as commercial entity, which you don't want to be because the rates are very different. Yeah, rates are very, very different. So we want to give you a configuration for the basic homeowner under 1800 watts. Very challenging to design the box because a lot of limitations. We can give you that. It's decently profitable, but the most profitable one is obviously we can go higher, right? You can go like your package, like because your internet cost is going to be flat, right? Your energy is metered, so it doesn't matter. Your internet you pay whatever for 1 GB line. You don't use all the GP, and it's fine. So if you can optimize your bandwidth and your energy costs, I think having a GPU data center at home is not a far out reality, and we have the partners, we have distribution to get there. Now we're finalizing our actual configuration for the box. Optimal sound is a consumer device, so it has to be like humming in a home and looks beautiful and all that good stuff. Once we have that ready, we think we'll have it ready by next 6 months. So our current prototypes are working well. It's just not very optimal to put in a home yet. And we should have a start cluster at home very soon. But we're not waiting for a home. I mean, we want to move fast, right? Waiting is it takes time. And home also has regulatory approvals, FCC. Our long-term vision has been the same since our white papers we wrote in 2018. It hasn't changed at all. Our vision is sovereign compute. Compute is going to be like spice, right? Spice must flow, we call it. Like spice, why I call it spice. Why spice? Because you think about like Middle Ages, right? Even before Middle Ages, historically, spice was the most valuable commodity, right? It was not an essential commodity, but it was the most valuable commodity. It became essential. I mean, it was essential in the East, like in India's and in that region. But when it came to Europe, it became such a valuable commodity. People were holding on to spice and whatnot. But I think like compute, we all use compute. We just don't realize how much compute we use. All our lives are completely on the cloud. And our vision is to, instead of giving all your data, all your giving up your sovereignty for comfort, we can have both. We can have comfort and we can bring sovereignty, right? Why that's important? Like the more you study about the grid, the more prepper you become because, the more you study about the grid, the more you realize how fragile we are. Very fragile. I'm not even talking about, just the energy grid, right? Like a little extra excess of energy production that hits a grid will take down a grid. It's a very fragile system. Water systems are extremely fragile, right? We're starting to experience the grid like failing here and there, but you have natural disasters. We used to withstand natural disasters back in there. Now we're no longer. The grid is one small disaster led to Texas freeze. Right? Disasters are getting worse and worse and worse. Call it global warming. So our reliance on the grid, if you were to rely 100%, God forbid something bad happens, and it looks like if you are in America 2025, you feel it. You feel the chaos. You feel like the things that were happening that we never thought would happen, right? And it's scary to think about how much we rely on these like few hotspots, right? In case of a national conflict tomorrow, international conflict, what do you think is going to get targeted? These little sitting ducks, large targets, right? These are massive data centers. We all know where they are. There are about 500 of them in America, right? That'll be, when someone takes out your infrastructure, they're going to target this infrastructure because if you're saying this is critical infrastructure to secure the homeland, now we can't have them as sitting ducks, right? So the way we look at removing fragility from the grid is to decentralize. I'm absolutely a believer in it, right? If I have compute, you have compute. If the grid goes down, we can still exchange, right? Like that's the thesis of Bitcoin. Look at what Bitcoin people have been working. You don't need internet as long as I can communicate some zeros and ones to you somehow with lights, whatever I need to communicate, still communicate. There's exchanging of value, right? So our vision has been to build a decentralized network, and it's not only just like good or future-proofing yourself, but it's actually good for the pocket. Like why? Because ultimately, first principles thinking, right? Ultimately, if you look at what's cost of compute is, well, you have the hardware cost, and you have the bandwidth, and you have energy and water. So it's resources that we all have. Like energy, water, bandwidth is local, right? Like bandwidth is as good as the connection that I have with you. Like if I put a line, that is bandwidth. That is connection, right? It doesn't have to go through a centralized entity. It can be peer to peer. So that's been our vision, and it is cheaper, it's better, and it's open. And if we have to rely, if I have to, my child is going to grow up in a world relying on this technology, I want to make sure that she has complete sovereignty on what the technology, and that's the vision. That's always been the vision, right? Now we're able to test this things we talked about. Now we're looking at, okay, how when I went on stage 10 years ago talking about like decentralization, why we need it, people didn't pay attention because we were like, hey, we're getting at a point where resources are getting scarce. 2023, we saw exactly what that means. If you were to get a GPU in 2023, if you're an AI researcher, getting an A100 was impossible. In the cloud, you need long. I mean, that's what the American Action Plan very clearly they said in 2023, or even now, in order to get decent GPUs, you need to have like long contracts with the cloud companies. They're going to pick and choose the highest bidders, and it becomes prohibitively expensive. It reminds you of the Middle Ages where you had feudalism. To get some grain, you got to go stand in line. That's exactly what it is, right? I mean, that's exactly where we're going in terms of like, these few lords, own the grain, and we all have to stand in line to get the grain, because if we don't, you don't get the AI.
I'd love to hear about your reactions to what happened recently with the White House's AI plan, and how you see that fitting in this larger picture.
Yeah, so they do have very, very strong, it's a very good action plan. I mean, it's the most exciting plan I've seen coming from the White House in a long time when it comes to AI, because the last administration was very, very closed off. The previous administration had registration for AI companies. Like if you were doing anything meaningful, you got to go register with the state. And I mean, there's a whole lot, and they literally shut down. They were literally like going towards shutting down any small AI companies from doing it. So the big refresher from this plan is removing that AI, those limitations. Great. Page number 4 has a whole subject on encourage open source and open weight AI. That's a first. Never saw that coming from White House. Like not in the previous. I mean, it was a footnote for in the previous administration AI plan. This is a front page aspect. So that tells you how White House is prioritizing open source AI, and we are very, very scared because open source is keeping the lights on for hundreds of millions, thousands of developers right now, because closed source is getting stronger and stronger. The only way to compete with that is through open source, right? And open source will give foundation to decentralization in terms of training and whatnot. So there's emphasis, right? There's emphasis on deregulating quite a lot. There's a lot of agencies that all seem to jump on. So the way government works is anytime there's something new and powerful, all agencies will jump on it, like they did with crypto, because they want to have a say, they want to have a cut. And with AI, it's worst. Like every agency wants to have jurisdiction over AI. Why not, right? Because they all know this is going to be the most powerful thing. So removing all that through executive orders, and maybe in having Congress, take these EOs and actually codify them in law, which I'm playing a good part in, right? The testimonies and all that help quite a lot. Opening up American federal land for placing these data centers for natural resources if we need to. Now, I'm a big proponent of sustainability, but I'm also a big proponent of not stopping progress, especially in a competitive world today where you have Chinese are out competing Americans, and Chinese are building a gigawatt of solar every 2 days, right? I mean, that's it's equivalent to one nuclear reactor every 2 days right now, and they're very, very good at it. We're not doing that, and we can't do that. We're not Chinese, right? What we can do is decentralization. That we're very good at, right? So so the way I look at it is like White House clearly understands the threat model, clearly understands what open source means, clearly understands what closed source means, clearly understands the synergies that need to exist between open source and and closed source. And honestly, I think it's a very, very optimistic. It does go into like national security and defense, and it does give some mandates for Department of Defense to embrace embrace open source AI and whatnot. But I think overall, I'm still reading through the intricacies and talking to a few people. But overall, what it looks like is the plan is solid. It is accelerating America. We're seeing for the first time the decels being quiet, or decelerationalists being quiet, and accelerationalists taking the center stage, which is exciting.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for taking the time to clarify these issues in such a kind of insightful and nuanced way. Really appreciate it. Best of luck to you guys and what you're building. Really enjoy it. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Well, there you have it. Thanks again to Greg Osuri, founder and CEO of the Akash Network. And thank you again to Gensyn, my partner for season 2 of The People's AI. Gensyn is a protocol for machine learning computation. It's building the network for machine intelligence that includes execution, communication, verification, and coordination software across every viable computer or device on the planet. And thank you to you, dear listener. If this is your first time here at The People's AI, please subscribe. We're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all the usual suspects. Send to a friend, share on social, all that good stuff. Thanks again, and see you next time.